Good afternoon. Thank you for taking some time to join us today for the Bosch Conferencing Overview webinar. I'm Preston Stevenson, marketing for North America, and as well as we have AJ Peterson joining us. So what we're going to cover today is a little bit of what we have in the conferencing portfolio, ranging from CCS 1000 to our DICENTIS wireless and to our DICENTIS wired. So if you have questions as we move forward, AJ and I will be answering those throughout the presentation. So please feel free to put those into the chat window, and we'll make sure we get those answered as we move through. So with that, I'd like to introduce AJ. AJ has been with us since 2011, supporting quite a wide variety of things, whether it's RTS, from the Electro-Voice, paging, mass notification, conferencing products, really heading up the training also for North America. So with that, I don't want to spend any additional time with that. Let's get straight into the presentation. So I'll hand it over to AJ.
Awesome. Thank you, Preston, and thank you everyone joining us today. Taking a little time on your day to go over the Bosch conferencing portfolio and system applications. So we'll just kind of dive right into it. What we're going to do is cover kind of as efficiently as I can in 1 hour, go through our entire portfolio of conferencing offerings. And what that is broken down is into CCS 1000 is kind of our first product. Then we jump into DICENTIS wireless. Then we have DICENTIS wired. And then we kind of wanted to cover a few more global settings. The camera control, of course, applies to a lot of those products. So we thought we'd do that after we go over the individual product to cover the cameras, as those protocols and certain switchers and camera models all work amongst all three products. And then just a simple kind of the market verticals, where we see these being used in the market today. So first, we will start the CCS 1000. And we would call kind of our marketing pitch here is compact yet versatile. I think the biggest key with CCS 1000 is the fact that we don't really need training. I mean, some of the other products really take a much deeper dive into networking and everything, and we really wanted to have a plug and play out of the box solution. This obviously saves money on training, on network requirements, and also installation requirements. So the other thing we did here is we wanted to keep it simple with licensing as well. This product has a lot of out-of-the-box features. So for example, 6 cameras, out of the box, we aren't licensing them. We have a web browser, so we can control it. We can run a synoptic or kind of a meeting management and whatever features it has via the web browser. And also built-in recording is a big part of this, and not to mention also the audio input and output to go to other third-party devices and things like that. So out of the box, I think a couple big features with this that I always pitch and we always demonstrate is the built-in recording. And I have a couple examples. There is right internally, you're going to get 8 hours of built-in recording. But of course, you could put in a 128 gigabit USB stick and get up to 4,000 hours of recording. So you can see tons of space there depending on your needs. And what I love the most about it is if you were to play this back, of course, you can export these files, you can move them, you could send the audio to somewhere else. But I can also play it back on a built-in loudspeaker in the control unit. And I can play it back on the discussion units themselves. So if we were going to reference or go back to what something or someone had said in a previous meeting, I can do that right from the web browser and play it to everyone in the room. It would sound great. On top of that, also the digital acoustic feedback suppressor. More than not, we see this replacing a design that necessarily isn't doing what it's supposed to do. We see a lot of built-in microphones in high-end boardrooms and built-in ceiling speakers, and then they need to have a third-party DSP. That's a lot of installation, that's a lot of programming, and a lot of end users might not even know how to work those devices. We've taken care of all that, where we're just setting these up very quickly on the desktop. The feedback suppression's built in, the microphones and loudspeakers are built in, working automatically out of the box, and you don't have to think about it. And all of that, you know, the pitch there is all of that makes a better meeting experience for your users. Just a couple operation buttons, and this is across the entire conferencing product line. You'll see the white, green, and red. So white is just indicating it's possible to speak. If you want to talk, you can. Green means you are request to speak, or you're in the queue to speak next. And red, of course, means you are live. And I had already mentioned how the loudspeakers and microphones are active at the same time, and we can do that because of that feedback suppression being on the level it is. So, weather-based and energy savings. Another thing getting very popular is to be green. So I really like that about this. We don't have to worry about turning this off. It just sees that there's inactivity and will turn itself off automatically. And then the web browser we like as well, because everyone's using this. As you'll see, we support all popular browsers, and you can do this with a tablet or an iPad. And we're seeing everyone with their tablet logging in and controlling that meeting live. I can make changes on the fly. I can control the meeting. So whether the chairman or the clerk, or maybe you have kind of an audio tech on site, they can sit there and make sure everything is happening fluently. So our control unit, looking at the components themselves, there are two models, and basically what we have is the CU and the CURD. What you're getting with the CURD is the addition of the internal recording, feedback suppression, and 4 individual outputs. We wanted to give options to hit different price points. I will say the CURD with those additional features is important enough that that is by far a more popular selection because of those. And we also are looking at the control unit being able to power and daisy chain 80 discussion devices. And then with the addition of external power supplies or extended power supplies, we can get up to 245 discussion devices on a CCS 1000 system. So extremely flexible. Control unit itself from the front. I talked about the web browser, which gets used, very popular, but we also have a completely front panel. It's a little bit scaled back, as there are more features if you log into the web browser. But if you just want this to be its most simplistic form, we can have volume control. We have how many microphones we want open, what mode we want them to be in. And then, of course, we can record right from the front and put that USB stick in if we need additional recording space. For the discussion devices themselves, we have 2 units. Essentially, it's a 12-inch microphone or an 18-inch microphone. That microphone is built in. Any one of those devices could be a delegate or a chairman with the selection of dip switches on the bottom. And then we provide you with buttons. So if it was a chairman, you'll see in this picture, there's actually 2 buttons there, where one is a priority button and the other is the push to talk button. And then a few accessories. So really simple when it comes to a design standpoint and putting this together quickly for a customer or for yourself. If we provide extension cables, if you know it comes with a pigtail that I can daisy chain all these devices together. Sometimes I need to jump to a further location or up to a DS, and I can do that with an extension cable. We also provide cable that you can terminate yourself if you need to pull it through conduit or through a floor. And then, of course, means to move them. We have cases for everything. We have cable couplers, which locks the cable. If I had several extension cables, I might want to lock those together. And then on the far right, you see the extended power supply. And again, all of those just daisy chain together based on how many devices you have. In the market, what we're seeing this being used is town halls, business centers, and rental. It's a very quick, easy system to set up. Even with a camera control, I can set this up extremely fast. And we see it a lot too in just, you know, let's say we don't want to drill a bunch of holes in a desk or something like that, where I don't necessarily want something permanent. This is something I can do very quickly. To just recap on CCS 1000, I kind of pitched there is that it's easy. There's no training needed. You can have up to 245 devices. Extremely straightforward. I can program this right from the front, or I could do synoptic control and configuration via a web browser. And we have built-in recording and feedback with 4 individual outputs on the CURD unit. And we can control up to 6 cameras right out of the box. So I'm going to just pause there. If there's any questions before I move on to DICENTIS Wireless, go ahead and put them in the chat, and Preston will read them out.
Sounds good. We don't have any questions yet coming in, AJ. I think 2 things that we would mention as well, just because the way the product has changed a little bit, is each one of the discussion devices does have a 2-meter cable on it, which in these times, right, is you are breaking people apart in rooms. That will be about 6 feet. So being able to utilize, distancing with what's already built onto the device itself. And then, of course, as AJ mentioned, with that tablet, bringing that device in, a participant can bring their own device. They're not touching something else that could be in the room and taking it with them for the meeting control. So still no questions, AJ, so I think we'll move on to wireless.
Well said, and I probably would have pointed it out later, but it is true how, and Preston agree, almost every new job we're doing, project coming in with conferencing does have some kind of COVID twist on it, or something where we're saying education and everything has now changed and we need to space people out. And this is an excellent, excellent solution where I can put all of these devices, or any of our conferencing devices, with the proper distancing and get that into a feed like what we're doing here with WebEx or Zoom or Skype or what, application of your choice. So moving on with wireless, we say maximum flexibility, 0 interference. And that's very true. I love to brag about this. If we were at InfoComm, we always really love to be on the InfoComm show floor or whatever trade show floor, which is probably one of the worst Wi-Fi environments you could make up, and show how seamless this does work without dropouts. And the reason that works is that is capable of that is that we're using all 44 channels in the spectrum. So we're using 2.4 and 5 gig. We're constantly scanning the spectrum at all times and dynamically selecting the most available and open channel. Like I said, we'll show this at InfoComm, and there's no dropouts. It just works phenomenal, because I know some people get nervous about that, but we really are kind of on the cutting edge on the Wi-Fi availability and technology that we're using. Of course, it needs to be secure, so we're using encryption as well. It's fully encrypted, and I'll talk a little bit more about that going forward. So as I said, we do constantly scan the entire spectrum, and a little furthermore of what that is, other than constantly switching and everything, is I like to point out the packet air concealment. So I like someone else kind of did this. If I have packet 1 and packet 2 gets lost and packet 3 comes in, we will automatically see that and draw a line from packet 1 to packet 3. And what that sounds like to a human is obviously not a drop. So we're constantly looking at that and aware of what's happening. And if anything does make any kind of drop or error, we're going to predict it, and with our algorithm just make the assumption of what that was and tie the 2 packets together. And to the end user, it just sounds excellent. So wireless, also very easy to use. We don't need a ton of programming, networking wise, very, very simple. And like CCS 1000, we have 6 cameras, up to 6 cameras. So we do have camera control and multiple camera angles if you want. We configure that in the web browser. This also has a wireless web browser that you can use your tablet or any iPad to control. So we don't need extra equipment like a wireless router. What's great about this is when you turn this on, you actually log into the Wi-Fi of our WAP. You can do a direct connection, and you do have other options, but in the fastest, set this up and start passing audio, I simply log right into the WAP itself, and can get these devices subscribed and passing audio in the matter of minutes. And we also have redundant WAPs as well. If anything were to happen, in all seriousness, what would happen if someone tripped over a cable and broke it or something like that, if someone physically smashed a WAP by accident, there is a backup one. We aren't really ever seeing these fail for some unknown reason, but there is that ability to automatically go to a backup WAP. So let's look at some of the components of the wireless system. As I mentioned, the WAP itself. Then we're going to look at our discussion device, which is just our audio discussion device, and then our discussion device extended, which adds in that 4.5-inch touchscreen. So the WAP is standalone. There is no central control equipment. That is the controller. That is what you log into. The range is approximately 100 feet by 100 feet. The I/O, the audio input and output, is 1/4-inch balance tip ring sleeve. That's how we get our audio to, a WebEx type meeting or a telephone conference. We provide you a power supply for the WAP, but also can be powered, directly via PoE. If we want a hard line and a hard connection to it, that's perfectly fine. It can live on a network, and it has the built-in intuitive web browser. And we have 120 devices per WAP. I should point out, and we kind of say this, every device can be used in dual mode, which we made a special microphone just for that. So a WAP can have 120 devices, but technically you could have 240 seats if you are using those in dual mode. Our discussion device. This is our audio discussion device, which is just exactly what we say it is. It has, like CCS 1000, it can be a chairman, it can be a regular delegate. We have the white, green, and red indicators on the microphones. The difference here, we also have, of course, the feedback suppression built in, the loudspeaker and microphones built in, and we can hot swap our microphones here. So we could do a 12-inch and 18-inch, or that shorter ones, what you're seeing is our Ray microphone, specifically designed for that dual use. And we'll talk a little bit more about microphones in a little bit. And then the extended device, of course, adds in, as you see, the 4.5-inch touchscreen. What's great about that is that gives me the ability to do voting if we're doing parliamentary voting. I have a built-in NFC writer, which I love, so I can swipe an NFC card. I can tie it to a delegate, and then that person simply can sit wherever they want, swipe their card. It'll say, "Welcome, Mr. Peterson." It'll know who I am. It'll know how I vote, and it will log all of that. So a really nice touch there. And then, of course, we can load just a company logo. Seems simple, but it is a nice touch to have in your boardroom, a nice logo of your company. And the other thing I should point out with that, what else is great is since that has that touchscreen, as upgrades come out, it's simply a firmware. It's simply a firmware upgrade. So if some new feature were to happen and you design your system based around the extended device, I could just simply upload firmware and that feature would be available. We always like to kind of at least say to consider that when designing or purchasing a system. So we look at our microphones, which are hot swappable, and some of the other accessories. The first one is that HT microphone, which stands for highly directive. It's really, for those of you familiar with line arrays and loudspeakers, it's a line array in reverse. So it gives us extreme control over the pickup pattern. It's a very tight vertical pattern with a wider horizontal pattern that picks up everything excellently for that 2 people. So if I'm in dual mode, I can sit comfortably at my desk and that will pick up 2 people with that wider pattern. In the middle, we have our standard same capsule as CCS 1000 and DICENTIS wired, and that comes in a 12-inch and a 19-inch microphone. And as I said, these are hot swappable. I could swap these on the fly if someone had a meeting and they just preferred an 18-inch over a 12-inch. You can simply pop that out and back in. And what we're seeing the most of, if they're not using dual mode, we're actually seeing the most popular being the 18-inch microphone, because it beautifully goes over a laptop or a tablet. And we see a lot of people want their tablet in front of them and their discussion device, and that microphone will go right over the screen and still pick up excellent and have a lot of rejection for people around them. So We really like that. The batteries, I always brag about the batteries. Bosch has their hands in a lot of things and a lot of industries. Some of you may know we do power tools as well. So we wanted to have the best battery in the market, and we do. So we went to power tools and said, what batteries are you guys using? We borrowed some technology from them, and we come up with our battery, which on an extended device has 24 hours of use and up to 30 hours on an audio discussion device. It recharges in 3 hours, and it gives us tons of indicators both on the unit, on the WAP, in the GUI. We have full status and health of the batteries at all times. And I always brag about it because I'm not going to say anything, but I encourage you to look at other manufacturers, and I will say we definitely exceed battery life and are doing excellent in that category. And then, of course, if we're going to have batteries, we need a smart charger to charge them, which I also love because you don't have to think about it. You just put them in there. The charger knows how hot they are, if they need to be power cycled. Once they're full, it just put them in, leave them alone. We can wall mount the brackets, but we don't have to think about it. You're not going to have any reduction in capacity by just leaving them in there. And then also we did really well on the travel cases. Obviously a wireless system is extremely portable. You can ask Preston and I, we've shipped these babies all over the world, and those cases are rugged and wonderful. It is, like you see, your standard Pelican case, kind of bomb-proof. So with wireless, we do add a couple licensing features. These features are something you add based on a license, and that's why I said if anything new came out, it's a firmware upgrade and then potentially a license. So just quickly, those are, if you want camera control, you would just buy one camera control license. And then if you wanted to do the dual use, the voting, or the identification, that is a per seat license. And honestly, they're extremely affordable. So if you had 50 discussion devices and you wanted all 50 to vote, you'd buy 50 voting licenses, for example. And then, of course, the identification card is just a one-time system license there. Or I'm sorry, that we sell the actual, the NFC cards we sell, and then the identification license is per seat, but we sell the NFC card in 50 pieces per package. Applications. Everything CCS 1000 does, plus more. A couple I like to point out, like Preston said, the new social distancing thing, this works wonderfully. You can actually get to a point where you're assigning someone potentially a physical device and or their microphone, so no one else is using it. Of course, you can clean them, but we are seeing people where they have their microphone and they might have their discussion device, and now we aren't sharing anything and we're keeping our distance. I mean, this is a real thing, and we're seeing it come to fruition in the projects we design, so that's something to consider. Another one I always like to point out is the historic buildings. Obviously, if it's wireless, I don't have to drill any holes. I don't have to mount anything. So if I have this wonderfully historic city council chamber, I don't have to run any wires, and I can handle all of that. And then other than just taking over, for lack of a better term, an improperly designed PA with, feedback suppression that's not working and speakers that are in the ceiling that don't really sound that good. I should point out also, all of these devices have headphones jacks, and they have 2 of them. So if I'm in dual use mode, I can have any pair of headphones Bosch offers, and I would like to point out we offer ISO compliant headphones. Part of the ISO compliancy is hygiene. Again, going back to that, bringing your own pair of headphones, bringing your own microphone. We have all of those features in the market right now. So something to consider when looking at how we're going to do business going forward. So to briefly recap, wireless, we've got obviously an encrypted Wi-Fi. We can do up to 120 devices or 240 in dual mode. Straightforward configuration and synoptic control via web browser. If someone was going to ask, it's 128 megabit encryption. I usually get that question. Cameras, up to 6 cameras. Longest battery life in the market. And of course, it's automatically scanning the entire Wi-Fi environment, constantly changing in case a channel got interference or anything like that, and also has that packet prediction. So if there was a packet drop, you wouldn't hear that in the audio coming out of the speaker. So I will take a quick pause there as well. If anyone had questions on wireless, go ahead and type them in the chat, please.
Perfect. With that, AJ, we do have one question. Is the PoE for the WAP regular PoE, or does it require PoE plus?
Regular PoE.
Perfect. And one thing I will mention, feel free, make sure you reach out to your sales colleagues if you have any questions on this as well, because we are running a pretty attractive promotion throughout the summer here for what we're calling Recharge Your Business. So you know, helping in these times of social distancing as you need to spread. So reach out to any of them. There's one other question. Can an end user bring their own earbuds to plug in instead of Bosch headphones?
Yes, we had any standard, your Apple earbuds, and even more when we look at our iDesk, which I'll get to next. We not only accept any headphone, we also can intelligently make them ISO compliant on the iDesk. We'll talk about that more. DICENTIS wired, but the answer is yes.
Perfect. So with that, AJ, we will continue on.
Great, thanks, Preston. Okay, so DICENTIS wired. I like this. This is from the NATO convention in Brussels a few years back, but it was a big project, and we're pretty proud of it. So I start with that slide. So this is DICENTIS wired. It is our flagship, or I always just call the Cadillac of our conference offerings. I'm very happy with it. I love supporting it. I love working with it. I'm always happy to take any kind of challenge you may have and throw this system at it and see what it can do. So this presentation kind of shows the 4 blocks on the right, the highest performance, the security, the future-proof ability, and the flexibility of the system. That's kind of what we highlight with this. So I know everyone brags about how good they sound. I definitely brag about this system. We've won jobs because of how this system sounds. It is using absolutely Dante audio as its backbone for its audio platform. It's absolutely, I mean, latency free in relative terms, you know, a millisecond, up to 100 languages, completely uncompressed, absolutely Dante through and through. The acoustic feedback on this system has a chip in every single discussion device. So we are not taking your mix and trying to pull frequencies that might be happening on the left side of the room or the right side of the room. We will see that if there is a frequency or feedback issue on your device, we'll fix it right there. That way our mix or any Dante feed we're sending to another device isn't going to have any kind of frequencies or weird things happening as the feedback pulls those troublesome frequencies out. You're just not going to hear that. And then we do have at all times an active DSP running. This system is constantly listening to itself to optimize its own acoustics and do automatic EQ, automatic gain control, automatic compression on each device. So I'm always super proud to do a shootout and say, listen to this, I encourage you, listen to everything else and come listen to this. So if you haven't, or if we ever get back to Infocom and you haven't heard this, I'd really love to show it to you, as would Preston. Future proofing. So as I mentioned, you'll see this a lot on Bosch products is Omnio. I could do a whole nother hour on Omnio. So in its most basic term, Omnio is Dante audio, standard Dante audio as the audio platform, and standard OCA open control architecture for the control platform. We take that and encrypt it, and more on the encryption in the next slide, and put that over Cat5, and that is what Bosch calls Omnio. What is so beautiful about that is that when it's Omnio, we are using those standard platforms, but we control them. We have them kind of on our own little, almost like a VLAN, if you will, that we can control. And then based on what you want to go in and out of that, we can strip off the Omnio and send standard Dante to third-party devices. So we can be on a network completely isolated. We can be on Dante controller isolated or not isolated, and interface with any other device that uses that. And I think that's what allows us to really say that it is future-proof. It's a truly IP-based system that plays nice on a VLAN, plays nice on a private network, and can jump subnets as large as you want it to go. In theory, Omnio can support 10,000 devices. So, you know, you can see how big it gets. I think Preston did a system with 1,000 devices, or roughly something like that's one of the largest ones. More on it later, but out of the box, we're doing 750 discussion devices. Right out of the box, you can have a meeting with 700 people, 750 people, part of that discussion. Oh, the encryption. We're using TLS and SSL encryption, so secure military grade encryption. Obviously, no one can log in and hack the system. That's obviously important in high-end meetings and government type entities. So that's definitely something we have to be aware of. And then, of course, that we have power and cable redundancy. Okay. We are using a Windows server for our services, for our background services. What else this allows us to do is, other than having the device and having power redundancy and cable redundancy and standard IT technologies, is if I want to do a server with, you know, RAID, dual power supplies, Hyper-V, I can have a truly like start to finish redundant system. And that's kind of what gives us that and says how secure it really is. So flexibility. You know, diagram one, we're looking at what I'd call a basic system. I plug it in. You have our server is the smaller square, the APS, which is the controller, is the larger rack mount, and then I can daisy chain or do a redundant loop of discussion devices right out of the box, depending on the system size, you know, kind of a basic system. I add a step to it. Now I can also, all of these devices are truly running on a gigabit network, so I can power them via standard PoE. Most of our cameras are PoE plus, but these discussion devices are PoE. So I could have my redundant loop in one room or several rooms. I can add a PoE switch, and you'll see up in the diagram I've added some home runs. So I can home run over standard Cat5 as, you know, up to 750 devices. I can put cameras on the network. I can put clients. That's what the laptop is, maybe an operator, a client PC. And what that allows me to do is use existing infrastructure. If someone said, well, we don't want to pull cable, or all of our conduit is full, but we have a bunch of copper already ran, we can use that, or we can use a VLAN, right, as it is. Then what we've added here is, you know, as the customer grows, the devices that they added were some Wi-Fi routers, so my client can now control meetings wirelessly on a client PC or tablet. In the upper top, we have interpretation booths. Again, it looks like those are powered off a PoE switch, or they could be in the daisy chain, whatever's more convenient. And then in the middle left, they've added listening stations. So now I kind of have what I say a full system there. I have several flavors of discussion devices. I have client operators, both wired and wireless. I have cameras and camera control, so I can see what people are doing. And then I have some listening stations where maybe I just want to hear the meeting, but I'm not going to partake in the meeting, and I could hear that in several languages. I also want to point out in those interpretation booths, they have TV monitors. One thing we do that's definitely different, and I will go in more on that, is that our iDesks have an HDMI video output. So if I have cameras on the network, I can run an HDMI output to an interpreter monitor. Now that interpreter can actually see someone's lips moving, and you know how much that would help them when they're interpreting. And also, so they don't need to be in direct line of sight of everyone, they could be in a remote area or just somewhere where they can't see everyone. That would immensely help them. And we've even went to the level based on different encoders and latency that the iDesk has an audio video latency sync. So if for whatever reason the audio codec and video codec wasn't on, I can just adjust that right at the iDesk. I think that's really unique, and I think that sets us apart from. So some of the protocols that's happening in the background here, obviously I talked about Dante, that's our audio background. The entire system, so this is third party, we're talking third party stuff. The entire system can accept H.264 feeds. So any camera encoder or camera feed, video conference you want to put into the system, we can take H.264 feeds. The iDesk interpreters can actually switch between two of them. They could have a presentation feed. This is a way where I could see a PowerPoint or a video or a teleconference on my system or on a projector or TV monitor, however you'd like to do that. We support ONVIF camera protocols. The MMD2s is an Android background. And then I always like to point out the JSON and .NET API. The system is a full open API. So any Crestron, AMX, any other kind of third-party devices, very often we go into a room that's controlled by Crestron and they say, can Crestron also control this system? The answer is absolutely. So we can really integrate to existing infrastructures and have the customer use the system exactly how they want to. Just covering the software, the other systems I said had a web GUI. This does actually have a meeting application software that we call meeting application. And that's where you set up structured meetings, structured agendas. We have delegate databases with far more feature sets. On this one, if I have a login card and I swipe my NFC card, I could program that I want my headphones to be in German. I want my language on my discussion device to be in German, or any language, up to 100 languages of interpretation. And this is where I set up my voting preparation and also have synoptic control. And that smaller screenshot there is just an example of what synoptic control, where I can see I'm loading a database with a photo, so I can see a photo or a camera feed of who's talking. I can see how they voted on a certain item, or when they're talking, or controlling their microphones on and off. So looking at a couple of the components. As I mentioned, it is a server-based system, and I love this so much that we got together with HP and have and sell a turnkey system. So you can use your own server. We wanted to make it open if you choose to go with another server. But we also wanted to make an option for our customers to have an off-the-shelf solution. And this is that. It comes completely loaded, optimized with DHCP server, everything set up. So other than licensing it, I can plug in my system and be up and running very quickly. And then our APS, our audio powering switch, and what this is handling, this is our I/O. This is our analog audio in and out, and this is also our Dante chip. So this lives on the network, obviously, and that gives us Dante audio in and out. It gives me individual Dante feeds in and out, and also powers the devices themselves. We don't list a power requirement because the requirement, we have a calculator, of course. It depends on what discussion device you're using and how long the cables are. But we give you a little calculator and you could very quickly find out, oh, if I have 10 multimedia devices and I'm going 60 meters, I can do that on this trunk of that system. And then if I want more, I want hundreds of devices, we simply throw a PS2, which is an extension power supply on the network. And then I just get four more trunks and can daisy chain more discussion devices. And again, this system truly is just a big network. It is a big gigabit network. Our microphones I covered in wireless, they're the same microphones, so interchangeable if you had wired and wireless systems. Gosh, Preston and I have done wired systems integrated to wireless systems, integrated to IR interpretation systems. So it is, as I talk about these, they are 3 systems that we wanted to have the ability, if a job was smaller, to just give you that product. But if you have a really big application or some kind of challenging environment, we certainly always love to hear about that and show you a Bosch solution. So we can make, you know, all of these devices play nice together, so to speak, via Dante, and that really keeps that flexibility and expandability, dare I say, somewhat limitless. But like I said, throw us a job and we'll certainly take that challenge. So let's look at the tabletop units, the actual discussion devices. Like in the wireless one, we have just an audio discussion device, which is just going to be our audio discussion. It has the dual headphones. It can be a chairman, it can be a delegate, and it can take any of the 3 microphones. From there, we've added more than on the wireless one, and we did this for, I would say, value engineering, is if you called us and said, what's the most affordable way for me to have audio discussion and voting with NFC identification, we've made a voting specific device. And that does everything the audio discussion device does, plus voting, plus the NFC reader. We have a language selection. So like the voting one, if you called and said my priority is audio and interpretation, with the NFC reader, so I don't have to, but I could scan in, I could sit anywhere, scan in, and it'll know I want to hear Spanish, for example. But that would be the most cost-effective way to get those features. And what's nice is these, voting and language selection, you don't need to add license to them. Those features come with it out of the box. I feel our most popular device, like in wireless, is what we call our extended device. This does everything that the other ones did: voting, identification. It has the 4.3-inch touchscreen, so it gives you a lot more to look at. I can do basic controls of a meeting. I can see who's talking, who's next to talk, and I can also add or take away. So I could have this and just have language selection, or I could have language selection or voting, or I could just have audio discussion and down the road decide I want to add things. And it's just a firmware upgrade. So we really flexible device and very popular. The multimedia device, MMD2, has everything we've discussed. It adds, has the NFC reader, has a larger touchscreen. It is running an Android platform, so I can sideload applications if I wanted. We see this the most popular for the Below 2 is I can pretty effectively control the entire meeting from this device. So if I don't have a clerk or an operator and I just want a really nice device to control the meeting, we very often see at least 2 of these being purchased with every system. And then it might sound small, but it is another very popular. I can turn the entire system on and off from here. So again, we're almost always seeing 1 or 2 of these bought for the chairman and or clerk or operator to control and manage the meeting itself. And then of course, our iDesk. The huge thing here, again, an NFC card to set up the interpreter's parameters. We also have the iDesk and the iDesk vid, which adds that HDMI output, which I don't really think anyone else is doing it quite like that. So instead of installing cable and running a whole nother camera feed to an interpreter to see the camera feed, I just plug in an HDMI cable right in the booth. I've saved extensive money on labor and install by doing that. And then, of course, huge thing, fully compliant with ISO 20109, as are the headphones that we offer. And to make the desk extremely versatile, we acknowledge many other manufacturers of ISO compliant headphones. So if they wanted to use an unnamed competitive brand and they plugged it in, our iDesk would auto recognize and say, you're using model ABC, and it would know how to set its limiter and its input and its EQ for that headset and keep the entire system ISO compliant. And this is really important now. And again, part of ISO compliancy is the hygiene aspect. So even more so with our new kind of COVID scenario, if you will, that interpreters are going to really want this if they're going to be using your desks. So looking at a couple of the accessories, cable couplers, pretty cool. I like them because what it does is I could run, if I get into tricky install situations, I could run standard Cat5 that's not even PoE, and I could inject power at this coupler and have devices. That lets me work in floor boxes. So I could install these in floor boxes or in, you know, difficult situations where I want to go between maybe the Bosch cable and Cat5 or vice versa, or have it mounted somewhere where I have a kind of a mobile setup and I plug into a wall plate or something like that. This allows you to do that. Of course, we sell pre-made cable that's pre-terminated, but we also sell a spool of 100 meters if you want to run it, pull it, do whatever you want, more of a custom install. It is, again, we're using true IP Ethernet protocol, so 100 meters is the limit of any Ethernet network before you have to hit another device. And then, of course, an installation kit. I'll just give you a little tip. If you ever need this, you can call Preston or myself, and we'll borrow you one. But if you do terminate your own kits, we have the tools you need to get that done. So talking about applications, I always say sky's the limit. You name it. Anything we listed before, plus as big as it can get. We're seeing a lot of major international organizations using this, boardrooms, hotels. Heck, one of them we did, they bought the multimedia, the kind of Cadillac discussion device in their really high-end boardroom because they liked how it looked. And I'm being serious. It sounds the best. It looks amazing. And they said, we just want a phenomenal audio conferencing experience. So they went with that, and it works great. But also keeping in mind, like I said, we see a lot of this being integrated to third-party devices and having full kind of experience of wired devices in multiple discussion tabletop units, incorporating a wireless device and wireless units, and then sending that to an IR, well, to the translation system, and then sending that to our IR system so I can wirelessly, either I can have wired devices to listen to different languages, or wirelessly listen to different languages, depending if I'm speaking or not. So we've done a lot where we kind of incorporate the full portfolio of products to make a solution, and that's kind of that's what Preston and I do. So to recap, in the wired system, you know, very government-grade encryption. You can have 750 devices right out of the box. We're using completely standard IP technology and topology for future-proof, but we have it highly encrypted and secure. So we get to choose what you see and don't see on that network. Camera control for as many cameras as your video switcher can handle. And we're going to look at cameras next to talk about that. And best-in-class audio quality using uncompressed Dante protocol. And that could be, you could say that's my opinion, but I certainly stand by that and believe that. It really does sound phenomenal. And up to 100 languages with ISO certified interpretation desks. So 100 languages of interpretation. Some might say I'll never use that, but what we are seeing is a lot of places have a lot of rooms where what if I have a large facility with 10 rooms that has all sorts of languages going on at any given time? I could run a 10-room facility all capable of 10 languages kind of simultaneously, if you will. But that's why we did that, for those large organizations that are international that need that. We don't want to have a limit on languages. So at today it's 100, and if you show us jobs that need more, I'm sure we'll increase that to 200 maybe. So before I do camera protocols, I'll just take a quick pause for questions.
Perfect. We do have one question. What is the power of the PoE that came in? And I think I'll just take that one, AJ, right? I would say everything is PoE standard, with the exception of the interpreter desk. The interpreter desk is PoE plus. And then we do have another one. Is there any way to connect DICENTIS wired and wireless together? So if you want to maybe talk about that one a little bit, AJ?
Yeah, so the answer is yes. What's happening there is the WAP is, at this moment, is an analog connection. So it is not going via Dante from wireless to wired, but we do a lot of systems where we simply take the audio feed from wireless and can inject that into the floor audio and make one larger conference system. But once we get that audio into DICENTIS, I can then send that floor audio and that discussion via Dante to other devices. Did that clear that up?
Perfect. No, I think that makes sense. All right, there's no other questions yet, so let's continue on.
Okay, so just about done here. And we did this last just because for the most part, it's not 100% global, but these protocols and these products apply to all three product families. So camera control. CCS 1000 is going to be 6 cameras, and there's no software or license needed. Just out of the box, I can use up to 6 cameras. Obviously, if I have more than one camera, I need a camera switcher, and we'll talk about that in a second. DICENTIS wireless is also up to 6 cameras, but is required to have a licensed camera control, 1 per system. And then you can use up to 6 cameras, and of course, would need a switcher if you had 6 cameras. DICENTIS wired, we say virtually unlimited. It's basically limited on how many cameras your video switcher can handle, and you'll see in a second that that's more than enough. And of course, also does require the 1 licensed camera control per system. So let's talk about what cameras we support. For ONVIF cameras, we're going to support Lumens cameras, and there's a couple kind of model suggestions, if you will, couple Bosch cameras that we support, the IP4000 and 5000 legacy cameras. We support Sony CGI commands, and then a few of the models that are using that. And also Panasonic CGI commands and several models that use that. So this is not to say you can't use another camera system. We've seen a lot where they might have a Crestron system that does some kind of voice following. You can do that, and we can take an H.264 feed of that if you want it inside of our system for the interpreters, or you could send that off to your video conference codec, and that's fine. You can have a camera system that doesn't have to be 100% integrated. They can work in parallel with each other. This is just saying that these cameras are natively supported and recognized, where our system is controlling them and actually moving them to pre-positions and telling them where to pan and zoom and where their feed goes. So if I have multiple, if we have 1 camera, no problem. I just hook my 1 camera up and we're all set. But if I have multiple cameras, I'm going to need a camera switcher. So these are supported switchers. But again, not saying you can't, under some scenario, use another one. It would just be working on its own. These are the switchers that our system intelligently controls and tells it what input to go on and what camera to use and what pre-position to go to based on your layout. So the Kramer MV6 is for all 3 systems up to 6 cameras, and we see that used quite a bit. The TV1 Choreo Matrix, this is why we say virtually unlimited. I mean, this goes on and on. If you're using DICENTIS wired, I could have 100 cameras on this if you ever had an application for that. This would work for CCS 1000 and DICENTIS wireless, but it would only work for 6 cameras. That is a limit to those 2, but for DICENTIS wired, as many as this can support. And then a couple other from TV1, just to give you some options. A couple other models that have an 8-camera system and a 4-camera system. And again, these are out of the box, natively controlled by the Bosch system. So to recap those, CCS 1000 and wireless is up to 6. DICENTIS wired is as many as your video switcher can handle. We support natively ONVIF, Sony CGI, and Panasonic CGI command protocols. And we support Kramer, MV6, the TV1 Choreo Matrix, and then several other of those models from TV1, an 8-camera model and a 4-camera model. So that is the full overview of the Bosch conferencing portfolio for today, trying to stay on time, and it looks like we're right at about the hour. So I'll open it up for questions, and then I'd just like to say thank you again for joining us.
Perfect. Thanks, AJ. Yes, go ahead and enter your questions in. One thing I will say is AJ and I will be doing these for the next 3 days. And the next 3 of these will actually be going through each one of these products a little bit more in depth. So we'll take, for example, one of CCS 1000, right? We'll actually get hardware involved. We'll start going through what you can do with the different programming and showing how that works in the system. Same for DICENTIS wireless, and then wrapping up with DICENTIS wire. So we do have a question. Do you plan to integrate both systems together so it'll act as one system like DICENTIS? Yep, that is something that we are working on, being able to integrate those together in one platform, as well as keeping the open standards with that. So, any other questions? All right, it looks like that is it. So we'll go ahead and wrap it up, and thanks for taking a little time out of your day to join us.
Yeah, thanks everyone.